Live from Houston, Texas, the humidity capital of the world, it's time for Money for Lunch, where we feed your brain and your business with supersized portions of business and financial news. Now your host, Bert Martinez.
Hey guys, we are back. My first guest, Francis Jackson. Francis Jackson is one of our regular contributors. He's also an attorney who specializes in disability law for those seeking veterans' disability benefits and Social Security disability benefits. He's a founding partner of Jackson MacNichol, and he's been featured all over the media, including CBS, ABC, Fox, NBC. He's most recently appeared as a guest on Ben Glass on the Consumer Advocate show, discussing benefits for veterans and Social Security disability benefits, and his practice allows him to make a difference in the lives of people facing disabilities. He's also been quoted in USA Today and is listed in Cambridge Who's Who. Mr. Jackson was honored by the National Academy of Best-Selling Authors with a Quilly Award in September of 2012. For his contribution as a joint author to the Amazon bestseller Protect and Defend, where he wrote about protecting one's rights to veterans' disability compensation. Always a pleasure to have him on the show. Francis Jackson, welcome back to Money for Lunch.
Thank you, sir. It's always a pleasure to be here, Bert.
Well, excellent. Listen, I wanted to dive into this. I thought about you quite a bit over the July 4th, 5th weekend because I thought, this is, some of the work that you do has a direct correlation to what we celebrate on July 4th, obviously, and there's so many veterans out there that are lost who are probably entitled to some benefits. So let me ask you this: how do veterans apply for disability benefits?
Well, Bert, that's actually become a pretty simple process now. The VA lets people apply online. For those who can't or don't want to apply online, you can get the forms by contacting the local regional office of the VA or by calling their 800 number and then just fill out the forms and send them in. Obviously, there are some folks who have very severe disabilities for whom that physically or mentally is a problem, and in that situation, they can have a third party apply on their behalf. Even a congressman or a senator can initiate a claim for a constituent.
Gotcha. Now, let me ask you this. Do veterans need to actually serve in a combat zone to be eligible for disability benefits?
No, Bert, they don't. And you touched on really an important issue, I think, a little while ago when you were talking about July 4th and 5th, and particularly the 4th, since that's when we celebrate our independence from English rule, and really the revolution and the veterans that brought that all about. I don't know if you know it, but veterans compensation actually started back with the Revolution. It's gone through lots of changes, of course, since then. But there have been a number of statutes passed by Congress, and the current arrangement for benefits does not require that a person serve in combat in order to be eligible for disability benefits. They do have to have service in the military. They have to have served in a capacity where they got an honorable or general discharge. They can't, for example, have been dishonorably discharged. But otherwise, pretty much all persons who served in the military will be eligible for benefits. I say pretty much all because there are actually a couple of odd exceptions. Some folks who serve in the National Guard, certain kinds of National Guard service may not qualify for veterans benefits, but by and large, anyone who has served actively in the military and has a disability that is related to their service will ordinarily be eligible for disability benefits. Alternatively, people who were on active duty in what Congress has called a time of war, and we're thinking things like the Vietnam era, the Korea, the recent Middle East, ongoing Gulf Middle East conflict. People who served in those periods may also be eligible for disability benefits, even if their disability is not directly connected to the military. There's a different benefit called disability pension that is available to folks who served in a period of war.
Interesting. Okay. Well, let me ask you this. What are the most important steps for veterans to take in getting the benefits that they are so rightfully due?
Well, the most critical one, of course, is applying, Bert. The way veterans benefits work, the eligibility for benefits can't start until someone applies. So if you have someone who might be clearly eligible for benefits, but for whatever reasons they don't actually apply to the VA to open a claim, that eligibility will never get acted on. So the single most important thing is to actually start an application. But from that point forward, probably the second most important thing is persistence. The way that system works, the VA has a very large system for determining eligibility for veterans benefits, and as a result, they get benefit applications ranging from things that are really very minor to things that are incredibly severe, and just the sheer volume of those claims makes it hard for them to move them forward very quickly. I don't know if you have had occasion to see it, but there's been a fair amount of publicity over the last year or so at the delays in that system. So persistence really is the second most important thing after applying. It is incredibly important that people stick with their claim. Unfortunately, some people get frustrated by the delay and just give up. Other people get turned down at the initial stage at the regional office and just don't continue to pursue the claim. And that's unfortunate because there are lots of valid claims that get turned down at the initial level simply because the VA doesn't have all the information. And many of those folks, had they persisted in their claim, would ultimately have gotten benefits. So the important things are to apply, to persist, and finally the third step is to appeal. The regional office, as I mentioned, often has to turn down claims that they think may have merit simply because they don't have enough information to prove the claim. So it's very important for people to take the next step, which is to appeal from any initial denial and pursue the appeal. In that process, they can add more information to fill in the gaps, if you will, to show the VA the missing pieces. And certainly those are the three pieces: make the claim, pursue the appeals persistently, and those are the pieces. As long as they file the claim and persist with it and appeal if denied, they have a good chance of success.
Right. Now, let me ask you this: if my spouse served, or maybe it's my son or daughter served, can I start the claim for them, or does it have to be the actual person who served? Well, unless the person is physically or emotionally unable, the VA is pretty insistent that they participate in starting the claim. But if for some reason your spouse is suffering from, say, something like a traumatic brain injury or a physical injury that makes it difficult for them to actually pursue the claim, to write out forms or whatever, the VA will certainly allow someone else, particularly a spouse, to pursue the claim on their behalf. And I'm glad you raised that issue, Bert, because there are also additional benefits that
a spouse may be able to claim even if the veteran is now deceased. There are several benefits available for spouses and families, even sometimes for elderly parents who were dependent on the veteran who is now deceased to pursue a claim and to get benefits directly. So I appreciate that you raised that issue.
You bet. Now, let me ask you this. Okay, so because you mentioned being persistent, and that isn't that surprising if anybody's ever dealt with an insurance claim or any other kind of benefits type claim. Sometimes being persistent is really the key. You just have to get the documents that they want for them to be able to complete the claim. But let me ask you this. When do veterans need a lawyer? Because you mentioned the appeal process. So do you need a lawyer before then or just during the appeal? Walk me through this.
Well, Bert, the VA actually has a statute. It's the only federal agency in the entire government that has a statute that says that you cannot hire and pay an attorney to represent you in filing an initial claim with the VA. So you have to file that claim and then get a decision from the regional office. At that point, you are then legally eligible to retain an attorney to help you. And certainly, since that's what I do, I try to make the distinction for people that it is really not always critically necessary to have an attorney, but if you've gotten to the point that your claim has been turned down, it's often to your benefit. And the reason for that is most of the folks who are dealing with these veterans' claims are not people who have ever had much exposure to the law, and unfortunately, the rules for veterans' claims are quite complicated in some areas, not in all areas, but in some areas, and it does often help for veterans to get the assistance of an attorney. There's an interesting statistic that the American Bar Association unearthed. They're doing a special project through their Young Lawyers section of the American Bar Association, and they have been focusing primarily on returning veterans in trying to get legal services to them. But the interesting statistic that they came up with was that on the average, veterans who had an attorney assist them got substantially higher monthly benefits than those who didn't. And it's simply because of the complexity of the system. The system is set up in such a way that it's often important to bring multiple claims. You need to prove different things for different claims. And folks who are trying to navigate that system on their own or with non-attorney representatives often simply don't either get the necessary information to make the claim go at all, or if they do, they don't get all of the benefits that they would be entitled to if they had someone who understood the system and could help them.
Gotcha. Now let me ask you this. If I retain you, does it mean that we're going to go to court? Is this a lawsuit, or does it just mean that you guys are stepping in and are just going to, I guess, fix some of the holes in my claim?
Well, it can mean either one, Bert. The way it works, the law has now been changed so that a veteran can retain an attorney relatively early in the process after the initial decision by the Veterans Administration. Often it's possible at that stage to gather the necessary information, particularly the medical information, showing how the problem that the veteran now has is medically connected to his time in service, and to resolve that without ever getting to the court level. There are a couple of levels here. There's an initial decision at the regional office. There are a couple of appeals from that, one within the regional office to what they call the decision review officer system, and then beyond that to the Board of Veterans Appeals in Washington. But in those cases where it really is a difficult case, the case will sometimes actually go as far as the United States Court of Appeals in Washington, and for that level, it's necessary to retain an attorney to be successful in most cases. There are people who try to do that on their own. Unfortunately, if you read the results on the court's website, you'll see that most of them are not successful because it requires fairly specialized knowledge to be effective in front of the court. But to answer your question quickly, it sometimes requires what we would think of as something equivalent to a lawsuit. In many cases, these cases can be resolved without even getting as far as a face-to-face hearing at the regional office, just by gathering up all the necessary information, particularly the medical information, to show the relationship between the disability and service. But sometimes it will require an actual hearing, either with the decision review officer or with the Board of Veterans Appeals, or in a few cases, as I said, it may progress to the level where you actually need to go to the Court of Appeals. That's not exactly like a lawsuit in the sense that there won't be a trial. It's all appellate briefs and so on, but it will require considerable expertise.
Sure. Francis Jackson, we're out of time, but always good to have you on the show. I just appreciate the fact that there are people out there who are taking care of our brave men and women who put their lives on the line. And again, guys, if you have questions for Mr. Jackson, check him out at Jackson-MacNichol, MacNichol.com, JacksonMacNichol.com. He'll take care of your questions. Francis, always good to have you on. We'll talk to you later.
Bert, always a pleasure. You take care.
All righty. Great stuff there. If you have questions about benefits, whether it's for veterans or Social Security, check out Francis Jackson. As always, guys, we appreciate you here. Always good to have you. We'll talk to you later.
Tune in Monday through Friday here on Money for Lunch, and check out our website at moneyforlunch.com.